So we're good to go. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another edition. This is VSA Dan having a chat with some of his business mates. So today we're lucky we've got Peter Hersh on board. We're going to have a quick chat. Peter is, I'll let him tell you all about his company in a second. He's a colleague of mine at the CEO Institute. We're in Syndicate 42 in Sydney. And so we are going to talk about some of the things that are happening. Peter particularly has got some great views on the packages that are coming out, and a lot of these are hitting the SME sector at a rate of knots. I think Peter has probably slowed down a little bit, which is just as well, but I reckon a lot of our clients, and maybe a lot of your clients, are having trouble focusing on where do they go next, which is sort of the conversation that we had in our meeting last week. Yeah. So Peter, tell us a little bit about what you do first, your background, just so that everyone knows a bit about you.
Okay, so I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a partner at Logicca Accountants. We're what we call a boutique accounting firm in Macquarie Street, Sydney. It's about 35 of us, 38 of us in the practice. We do audit, tax, business services, etc. In fact, we look after most stuff that you'd expect an accounting practice to do, apart from liquidations. We don't like killing things.
Yeah.
So
that could be a growth sector, by the way.
There is a liquidator in my building, and I did have a chat with them, and we've actually chatted with them. We weren't sure how much work we would lose and that sort of stuff, and we have suggested to them that if we do have a problem, we might second some staff to them while they're really busy, but looks like we may not need to do that. So
what are you seeing, Peter? Are you seeing the same distress that we are? I mean, people are calling us because they've got sponsored employees, which they either have to stand down or terminate. But then they start talking about, their rent issues, the fact that they've got zero revenue, the overheads continue. This concept of hibernation is an interesting one. I mean, all my years of economics, I don't think I ever talked about the businesses going into hibernation.
Yeah, precisely. Look, the rental one is the big sleeper, I think. There's still a big problem out there for that. The government's, the state government's saying they're going to bring in some legislation that's going to be a fallback for how this negotiation's meant to happen. But very difficult to do. Just again, to give an example, I've had negotiations with my own landlord. We received a letter from him that asked for my last 4 financial years accounts, a certificate from my accountant to confirm it. They wanted evidence that we were going to be in JobKeeper, a whole long list of stuff. I rang
what was your response to that?
I won't use the words I used, but actually, it was an interesting conversation because he did end up ringing me, and I started by saying, look, this is just not there. We can't do this, and it started getting a little aggressive, and then I said, look, hang on a second, we just need to negotiate this, and when we put the letter aside and said, okay, what are you prepared to do and what are we prepared to accept? Let's work out where we can go. I understand that they've still got to pay their outgoings. They've still got to pay the mortgage. They've still got costs. They need to understand that we're in trouble, and any perceptions that I'm busy are really irrelevant, because it's a matter of our clients paying us, being in a position to pay us. And also, we can be doing work, but not getting paid for that work, and not even being able to bill for that work. We've had that discussion. We've now got a broad idea of how this is going to work. He's going to come back to me in writing with some ideas, and then we'll come back to it from there. It is a matter of negotiation. I've been on the other side of that. We've got some clients who are landlords, the good ones are simply going, yeah, we understand that you guys are, we understand from the tenant's perspective that you're in strife. Let's see what we can do to help. Because what's the alternative? You'll get nothing. You'll get no rent at all. So if you can get half your rent and know that you'll keep your client, they'll be there at the other side, you're going to be better off than the alternative. So,
Peter, I think one of the problems is that nobody knows where the other side is. Everyone, I know the government's got this line saying, oh, listen, we're going to get through this tunnel, we're going to get to the other side. I want everyone to focus on the other side. But the problem is they can't tell us where it's going to be 90 days or it's going to be 60, 90, 120, you know, whatever it's going to be. Because and I think that makes it very difficult for people, particularly in the retail sector where they've got zero foot traffic and the revenues drop to zero.
Yeah, agreed. And part of the problem is it's going to be different for different people. I suspect that I will be able to get my office back to some semblance of normality in terms of working from the office well before a lot of the retail operations are operating. But when that is, I don't know. You know, for those people in the travel industry, if you're working in local travel, it may be a good thing. You know, we may open that up for people to travel around Australia as long as the disease is equally kept down throughout Australia. Yeah, well, not spread around. You know, that we don't have any pockets. You know, we don't have any of these pockets like we had in Tasmania and that sort of stuff. Yeah. Then we could open this idea of a bubble between Australia and New Zealand, and there's travel between them, and travel within Australia. That may work, but you know, for those of us that are used to traveling overseas, you know, I won't be surprised if in a year's time we still haven't booked our trips. Yeah. So yeah. Go on.
Yeah, there is this, as you know, I had to come back to Perth for some business and then I got caught into the lockdown. So I'm in week 5 now. Yeah, week 5 of working from home in Perth. Yeah. And I think, you know, West Australians have always been parochial. And I think the Premier and the government here have got this view that they can open up Western Australia internally, but still keep the borders locked down. And then, and they almost seem to think that we can run this independently. But you know, as an economist previously, it's we're an internationalized economy. You know, international travel, goods and services. Our biggest client's China. That's where we're selling all our iron ore to. All of the wines in the southwest, they're all being exported overseas. So this idea that we can run a little bubble economy and it'll all be fine, it's often fantasy land, in my view, anyway. You know,
definitely for a longer period. Short term, I think they may be able to do it, and short term is months. They may be able to say, right, let's open up WA, allow the people in WA to run a normal life, and they can do that if there's no more cases. So effectively eradicate it from WA, but opening up the borders and allowing travel into WA just creates a risk where this disease is still in all of these pockets around the world. You know, you just need one person to come in from United States, from wherever, and you're in trouble.
Yeah, they're very contagious. It's a very contagious thing. I mean, that it's true. 98% of people will get it and then get through it. They'll just recover. But the mortality rate, and it is quite virulent in terms of it's pretty easy to spread around.
Well, I've got a fellow that I played sport with in my younger days. He'd be 70, relatively healthy guy, or he was a few weeks ago. He was in intensive care, all but you know, they were getting close to turning the machine off. He's now, it seems like he's on a recovery stage, but that they're saying he's going to be permanently scarred. You know, that his lungs will be permanently affected or may be permanently affected.
That's the risk group though, isn't it? If you're 60, 70, 80 plus, that's
Well, I'm 64.
Oh, you're good looking 64. I mean,
yeah, okay, that's fine, but I'm still
healthy,
60.
You know,
and that's fine. But I still have my parents, thankfully, and I have my in-laws.
Yeah.
You know, are we just saying, oh well, forget about those guys, let them die?
Well, I haven't gone to see my parents for probably 9 weeks, 8 or 9 weeks, just because you know they're at a risk, and it's only sensible. And I think everyone in this environment just needs to be sensible, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but that's not an easy process. My parents live in Israel, and they've been in lockdown. Literally, have not left their unit for what is it, 8 weeks.
What's happening in Israel? What's the scenario? I haven't heard much about Israel at all.
So their numbers are not dissimilar to Australia. They were actually ahead of So they were ahead of Australia in terms of lockdown. They've had some issues with communities not doing the right thing, so they've had some outbreak, and they were a little slow in closing their borders with the United States. Okay. So they got quite a number of cases from there because there's a lot of travel between the United States.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
But they're getting there. But literally, my parents have not left their unit, to the point where if they've got garbage that needs to be taken downstairs to the garbage bin, one of their nieces or nephews that live over there, one of my nieces or nephews that live over there, one of their grandchildren, will come over and take it from outside their door and take it down for them. So they're just not allowed to leave the place. By law, right? You know, so it's difficult. You know, and at some point we've got to open it up, but without a cure, and it's a cure, I think, is in some ways more important than this inoculation. We're not going to. It's going to be difficult to open it up.
Yeah, interesting. So let's go back to the commercial stuff with the SME and all the packages that the governments have sort of layered on top of each other, and some of the state governments have come in as well. Is that in the SME sector, if you're in retailing or someone who's really been hit hard, Peter, is it enough to keep them going, or will they be able to use that through hibernation? I mean, what's the strategy for an SME retailer, let's say?
Well, the first thing to look at is, have you got a viable business? So look at where your business was up to now. Some of these businesses were teetering on the edge and, you know, didn't have long-term prospects anyway. If that's the case, don't battle through now to come out the other end and not and try and survive. That's not worth it. But if you had a reasonable business existing, then you know, you'd be trying to cut as many costs as you can. So speak to your landlord, try and defer, cut, abate, do what you can there. Any of the other costs that you've got, speak to them, cut them, stop them, whatever you can do. Cut your employees' hours down, so you know, they're down to something like what you're getting from a JobKeeper, and then you are almost in hibernation. Oh, and lastly, speak to your bankers. The banks they made a lot of noise, but they're starting to move now. You can approach them straight away and with deferral on existing loans. But if you want to borrow new money, that's still taking some time. But they're listening, and they're doing it. They are lending in these circumstances because they've got this guarantee on this on a $250,000 loan. The other thing is, stop paying your tax. If you've got any liability to the tax office, just don't pay it. The tax office, you've got to lodge all your documents, but don't pay anything to the tax office. They will hold off any action at all. and allow you to accumulate this until we get to September or October. Some people are finding they're saying October, some are September. And then at that point, they're saying at the moment that you can negotiate a payment plan to pay it off over some period with no interest. So that's where this hibernation idea comes from. You're effectively, all you're doing is passing money through your business to your employees, and it's the JobKeeper payment, and the rest of it just sort of floating. So, that's really the advice. But as I said, make sure to start with that you've got a viable business in the first place in normal circumstances.
So Peter, that's a really important point. What does that look like? I mean, people often how do I say this? They often love their business. They're in love with their business, if you know what I mean. But you coming at it with your analytical accountant's hat on, what does it look like to say whether or not it's a viable business?
Well, go back to 6 months ago, before we were here, and have a look at your business. Were you really making money? Have a look at the P&Ls. Which way was the business tracking? Had the internet started to affect you? Because if it had, the 6 months of people buying stuff over the internet, it's going to take a lot for us to get used to going back into shops to do the same thing. So, a lot of the stuff that's been happening slowly will happen more quickly. So understand what the effect of all of this is going to be on your business. Restaurants are a prime example of that. I was talking to a broker, a business broker who buys and sells, acts for restaurants in buying and selling. And his view was that the restaurant business as such will come back, but there will be a lot less restaurants than there were. People will get will get used to eating at home. Their cooking skills may have improved, and therefore there'll be less restaurants. And then you've got to question whether which restaurants will disappear. Will it be the McDonald's of the world, or will it be the high-class restaurants? And we won't know until we get there. But there are some that were teetering on the edge, that they were just covering overheads and all of that sort of stuff. Getting through this, they may, they've still got to expect that afterwards, it's going to take quite a bit to build up to where they used to be.
Yeah, it's funny. I took a ride around last night, and the McDonald's drive-through is very busy. And then all you see in the city are these guys on bicycles with their backpack delivering meals. And you used to see a few of them, but now you see dozens of them. They're a growth industry.
And that's a big problem, because they take a lot of money out of the restaurants. If you're a restaurant supplying food that way, it's very expensive. So that's not a long-term proposition for a store or a restaurant that was client-facing in the past. There are these, what are they calling them? Black door restaurants or something, where the restaurant
they're called dark kitchens. Yes.
That's it, dark kitchen. That's the word. Well done. Where the kitchen's there, the staff are cooking away, and they're just cooking for these the Deliveroos of the world.
That's right.
That works.
Conversation.
Yeah, that's a business model that works, but it doesn't work for your normal restaurant.
Yeah, it's interesting. The guy, one of the founders of Uber, sold out his stake in Uber and then went into this dark kitchens. He reckons that's the next frontier. And possibly it is. And there'll be people will be happy to eat at home, but they don't want to cook. So these dark kitchens will supply the food.
How well that'll work, heaven knows. We'll find out. It is. I'm seeing the same thing. My wife and I try and go for a walk each night. By 9 o'clock, walking around the eastern suburbs of Sydney, it's it's pretty dead. There's hardly a car moving, but the only thing you do see is Deliveroo. The bikes and traveling around. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Peter, from what I hear, what you're saying is that see whether or not how you were traveling 6 months ago, see whether it's worth trying to battle through. Get your costs down. Most people's labour costs is a big one. Try and get it as close to the JobKeeper type package as you can. Negotiate with your landlord to the extent that you can, either as a waiver or a deferral. I suppose a waiver is better than a deferral. That takes care of a lump of costs, I suppose.
Yep.
And then on the revenue side, well, the revenue is a hard one, isn't it? Because you don't know when you're going to be able to get, and when you do start to get some revenue through for a lot of retailers, it's going to be a trickle before it becomes anything else.
Yeah. So, but also have a look at what you can do. Look, there's a restaurant around the corner from my home that historically is full all day. That people out on the street. Nice little restaurant. They went to takeaway very quickly, and now you can go in there and buy your eggs and your masks and your hand lotion and whatever else they can find. They're selling their wine, they're selling whatever they can. So they've restructured their business in a lot of ways. They're buying other stuff that they, historically never sold and are making it available because people are still coming to them to buy their takeaway coffee. So while they're buying their coffee, they can buy some of these other things.
Yes.
So, there is opportunity. You're seeing the weirdest stores selling weird stuff, but makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. All right, Pete, that's I think that's been really useful. I think a lot of people get a lot out of that. Is there anything else you want to say about the SME sector? Because it's that's pretty much the space that Logicca operates into. Is that?
Yeah, pretty well. We've got clients, from what we like to call the little old ladies with a couple of investment properties, right through to some larger operations. But most of our clients are in the SME space. And this is, we've been spending a hell of a lot of time talking them through all of the concessions out there. The one lesson, don't try and do this yourself. Ring your expert, find out from them, because they'll know where the problems are. We know even today there are numbers of businesses that JobKeeper doesn't fit, should fit and doesn't because there's some particular circumstance. And really important that people have got advisors who can then go to the tax office to talk to them about those issues, because the tax office can amend things to make it fit if necessary.
That's a really important point, Peter. I mean, a lot of them will go into this and they might even keep staff on because they think they're entitled to the JobKeeper. But how can you nail it down? How can an SME know that they are going to get it and then keep those people on? Otherwise, that could end up being a double whammy for them. They keep people on, costs are higher, 8 weeks or longer down the track, and the ATO goes, listen, sorry, thanks very much, but you don't qualify.
Yeah, so we've been doing that exercise with our clients. I've got a meeting with one of our school clients with their finance committee at 5:30 tonight to go through to explain to them why, in our view, they do comply, and they need to show a 30% drop, and I think we can show that, and then how that will work through. So yes, you do need to work that through and make sure that you do pass. Don't guess. And by the way, most of my clients are guessing the wrong way. Most of them have guessed that they don't comply And then when you talk to them, you find they do. And this is a lot of money. It's $19,500 per employee.
$19,500. Oh, you mean over the 6 months?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Because once you comply, once you've got your 30%, you're in. You're there for 6 months, as long as the employee doesn't, you know, do a runner or something.
Okay.
You're going to get.
What happens if they cut the hours for the employee? Do they still get the 1,500?
Yeah. The 15. So you have to pay the employee a minimum of the 1,500.
Right. Okay.
So if you've got somebody that you were paying less than that, you now need to top them up to 1,500. But once you're paying somebody over $1,500 a fortnight, that money is effectively yours.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you're the man to go to. Okay. So I'm sure you're going to, once we get this out on the airwaves, I think, there'll be a bunch of people who'll give you a call, because I don't think they can do it on their own. Yeah, they won't be able to know whether they qualify.
Yeah, as I said, that doesn't have to be us, but do go to a specialist. Do go. The government's even saying that. It's worth spending a little bit of money to get the advice right, and make sure you've got everybody in there. The one person people seem to forget is that there's a concession in there that says that if you have a director who is not being paid by the business, but they receive, a dividend or a director's fee or something, or drawings, the company, for whatever reason, you can include them in JobKeeper. Now, most people are forgetting that. And so a number of businesses are saying, oh, I haven't got any employees. And you go, well, hang on, what about yourself? And $19,500 is enough money. For 10 minutes work, it's worth getting.
Pretty good. Yeah, for sure. All right, mate, that's excellent. Thanks very much for your